be here and have our conversation. And so we're just gonna chat, there's not gonna be any reading, and then we'll have some questions. I loved reading this book, and I know you talk in there about the pink cloud, but I actually love how not pink cloudy it is, and how really grounded it is, right? And how you've got this sort of, keep thinking of the word slouchy, it's not quite the right word, but this kind of like laid back voice in it that just feels so inviting and up close. I really appreciate that about, and I love how, without making too much of it, the book is so much about the psyche. And as a psychoanalyst, I'm zeroing in on that, right? I first read it over the course of weeks, sort of slowly, and then I reread it again quickly yesterday in preparation for tonight. And I saw that it's really so much about the unknowable known, and how you're really grappling so much about how how you can know something about oneself and not know it, and that knowing and not knowing can go on for decades, right? And you call this complex dance of knowledge and denial. So I wanted to start with that, looking back. How do you understand that dance from this vantage point that you were involved in, and what was going on for you for all those years around gender?
Well, I mean, it changed a lot, but basically it started as something I didn't understand because I didn't have any knowledge of this. This is something that's been confirmed for me by the couple of other old age trans women I know who also had the experience of thinking they were the only person in the history of the world who ever feel this way. And so, the world was just not right for this. I mean, I didn't understand, where to go with this, except to stuff it back down the hole. And even as, I went to high school in the city, I started reading underground newspapers, I went to college here, I hung out in bad parts of town, I got to know people in, various art worlds and all that. And so I came ever closer to, knowing what this transgender business was all about, but I still wouldn't do it because, well, I mean, in context, right, the fact that I like girls and I was ambitious, and those two things barred the door even past my parents or society to things that might not have stood in my way otherwise. And and I was determined, and even like, say, 5 years ago, I was still determined to take all of this to my grave. It just didn't work with my life. And then suddenly I was on the moving sidewalk, being whisked away. I wasn't quite screaming and flailing, but I was surprised. It seemed to be some other agency taking hold.
And that agency was the agency to act on it versus this sense of like, you encounter trans women, you write in the book, you had a sense of, I am a girl or want to be a girl, or this had come in and out of your mind over the years, but this was a new kind of agency that came in right.
Well, I mean, when I say agency, I mean, I kind of mean like it felt like something outside me. And I have no spiritual beliefs of any kind. So, this was kind of a contradiction, but there you go. There's also, those various chambers of the unconscious that are doing things without one's knowledge or behest. So,
absolutely. Yeah. You write about that moment when the dam burst around doing the face app photos with yourself, right? So, uploading face app and doing the gender swapping, and what do you think it was? Do you think there was something about that, seeing this female self from the past, these sort of almost specters from early life of an alternative self that?
Yeah, there's actually a couple of things going on there. One was that, I was seeing this, my alternate life, and the weird thing is the AI seemed to get like my fashion choices right, hair grooming, weird, right? But the other thing too, I only figured it out so recently, which is that now turning up every photograph of me between the ages of 11 and onward, there aren't that many, but they were scattered all over my house. It became a project. It took like 10 days or 12 days to find every last box and album and basket in which they were buried and sort them and, you know, etc. And what that did, well, it turned it into a project. I'm very susceptible to projects. And what that did was to break a sort of conditioned thing that I was unaware that I had, which is that there had always been a time limit on my fantasizing and speculation. You know, I do it for an hour or two and then slam, lid went down on the box. And because I was engaged in this project, I burst right through that. And I think that more, the mechanics of it, I mean, I think that's the determining factor.
So it's almost like there was this unwritten rule about how long you could fantasize about being female, and then this was just, you went past that.
Right.
Yeah. I remember saying you were, before this happened, you were also kind of, you just said you were going to take this to your grave, and in the book you said you were also preparing for death before this opened up as a kind of new life. Yeah. Thinking about the photos too, you talked about being susceptible to a project, but you're also a visual artist. How did you think about, you know, including the photos in the book? How did you place them? Were you doing something there that you were wanting to kind of get across? I'm thinking about how they're all the face app photos, but then I think the last photo is not a face app photo, right? It's
the last couple.
The last couple is just you. Yeah.
Well, in fact, the last three. Well, anyway, I don't remember, but 2 or 3. Anyway, well, I mean, as a writer, I'm kind of cold-blooded. So even in the midst of this emotional whirlwind, when these pictures started coming through and amazing me, and they being some black and white and some color and different formats, I instantly thought, this is going to be a book, and I'm putting these pictures in. I mean, this is like at the very start of this whirlwind, I was already thinking about writing a book, and that's how bad I am. Any human experience that seems worth writing about, I'm going to exploit it.
So this was before, I mean, so this coming out thing, right, is a weird experience, because you kind of come out in, I mean, around this stuff, and sort of fits and starts and go backwards and forwards. So here you are doing this project with the face app and the photos and gathering, and you're thinking this is going to be a book. Do you know at that moment, in that process of the project, that you are coming out as trans? Was that conscious?
You know, I can't like put things in order really, because it happened. I mean, I do remember that, thinking that about the book, because the photographs just blew me over. If it hadn't been for the photographs, the whole thing might not have happened, you know, including, well, beginning with the book. But as far as coming out as trans, excuse me, I keep my plosives here. As far as coming out as trans, I guess that emerged at some point over this like 10-day period. Can't say quite when, but all of a sudden, there was no hesitation. I mean, once I decided to do it, I had decided to do it. I wasn't teetering on the brink of anything. I just marched right into it.
It makes me think of your therapist saying also, you come out to your therapist and her first words are, great idea, do it, right? So I wondered, did she sort of have a sense of this was coming? And
I asked her that, and she said, no, it just sounded like a good idea.
That's like the horror of every right-wing transphobe right now. That we're all sort of, all of us, therapists, are marshaling everybody into transit. You know, I was noticing too with the photos, on my first reading, you know, again, I was sort of going slowly through it, and then on the second one, I was going more swiftly. I had an experience of imagining you in the past as I'm reading your past, as a girl, as a young woman. The photos had, the images had gotten into my psyche and reimagined you as the reader. You know, my favorite one is the Columbia ID. You look at this very serious lesbian writer with glasses in the 70s. You know, and I just like feel like
the cascades of hair.
Yeah, it's great.
1973.
It's great. It's great. So I just wanted to share that with you. I wonder, you know, was that in, and maybe not, maybe this isn't a thought, but if that was a hope. I mean, I know that, you know, the way that a lot of this gender stuff works is people will sort of reimagine us trans people as the gender that we are now in the past, right? And there's some of that wishfulness in the face apping too, right? Sort of like, yeah. What's it like for you to look at those photos of her?
Well, you know, it's a little, I don't know, it's a little heartbreaking, you know. It's definitely, well, I was gonna say, I mean, it's a trip. And maybe it's a little less than a trip since I've been living with these pictures for 3 years, but yeah, it's still kind of mind-bending. Of course, the whole experience is mind-bending. What am I talking about? Will it ever feel like normal life? I don't know. I mean, does it? I mean,
No.
Yeah.
I mean, yes and no.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's always a little bit of a mind bend.
Right.
Which is okay.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully, we're also bending other minds.
I mean, well, it makes me think of somebody I once knew who got himself tree panned so he could continue to trip for the rest of his life. I didn't have to get myself tree panned. You know?
You touch on the phenomenon of the pandemic. It was called like quaran-trans is the word. Instead of quarantine, this word quaran-trans, where all these people came out. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There was this phenomenon during lockdown where a lot of people were able to realize that they were trans or non-binary, and you know, you just kind of said maybe that's not quite it, but I'm just curious about your thoughts on that. If there was something about I know you're home a lot, you know, but the not having to be in public, the not having to have the gaze of others upon you, if that might have freed up some.
I don't know about that because I'm such a hermit. You know, I go to the supermarket and stuff, but basically I may not socialize for months at a time, really seriously. So I'm always kind of face to face with myself. So that didn't change life that much. It's true that, you know, as my friend Mimi put it, maybe I was feeling so comfortable. And in a way, you know, that's true. It was like the most comfortable year I ever had, which I felt a little guilty about considering other people's year. But that may just have been it. I just, you know, finally was able to like let out a full breath. Part of it was just situational. That I just got this new phone, which I had to stand online, you know, for like 2 hours at the Gateway Mall in Albany to get. You know, and I might have gotten the phone some other time and had the same experience then. I don't know, you know.
So we have the Gateway Mall to thank for this.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We were just talking earlier, and you said that you wrote this book about 5 times faster than any of your others.
It took about, I'm thinking about 2 months all told.
You wrote the book in 2 months?
Yeah.
That's really fast.
Yeah. Because while I was writing it, I wrote 4 substantial essays, and I was doing all the promo for my book about the reservoirs that came out that September. So it boils down to about 2 months. But I was writing morning, noon, and night, which I never, ever, ever do. I'm very lazy, and I usually procrastinate until like 2 o'clock in the morning and start writing. This, I would get up in the morning, eat, swallow my breakfast, and go start writing, and write all afternoon, write all evening, write all night, and force myself to go to bed. I was just bursting to get this down.
It just poured out of you.
Yeah.
Were you doing much editing as you were writing, or was it?
I always do.
Yeah. So do you like write and then go back and edit and move forward?
I edit as I'm writing, and then I go back over and over and I start reading from the top, like, 40 times.
I mean, it's a exciting time to be trans and a scary time
Both,
to be trans.
yeah.
How is it for you to be coming out in this moment with something that's so revealing and personal?
Well, I mean, I'm the right person to do it because I've got sort of very little to lose, I mean, I'm only about a decade away from death, and I'm in good health, yeah, but actuarially, and I have a reputation, the kind of reputation that's not going to be undone by those people because they don't care about it anyway, etc. And I mean, I do have to confess that this year and what's coming up makes me grateful that I do have an EU citizenship, and if necessary, I'll jump back across the ocean. But anyways, it's being trans and living upstate and all that does make me feel very isolated, but that's sort of an advantage too, because I'm not really subject to peer group pressure. I just can write in a kind of not in a void, not a vacuum, but from a distance, from a creative distance, maybe.
When you say peer group pressure, were you feeling that or potentially feeling that as you were writing, that you would have to write it?
Oh no, I don't mean that. I mean, for example, that I'm familiar with like groups of young trans writers, and some of whom are amazing, really great people, and they're doing their work. I mean, as one does when you're young, you do your creativity is in part collective, I think I'm able to try. I mean, definitely one of the goals I had in mind for this book is not to write it. I mean, to write it to encouragement of young trans people and all that, but also to try to explain it to cis people who do not get it at all, even the best meaning of them. It's something that's really, really, really impossible to convey. And I don't turn up my nose at the impossible, Yeah.
Do you feel like cis people who have read this book, do you feel that they're understanding you in it?
Yeah, to a certain extent, I mean, it's hard to say because most people, aside from a few reviewers, I've had 4 reviews to date. Most people I've talked to who've read it know me already, so that they're like reading the book through me. So that's not giving me the experience of the people who don't know me at all, of course.
Sure. Do you feel like the reviewers are getting it?
The one in the New Republic really got it.
Yeah.
Pretty nice one in Slate today, too. I will say nothing about the New York Times. The most favorable.
What do you want people to get? What do you hope cis people will get about you and about trans?
Well, I mean, to take it seriously, that it's not like a fad of youth, that it's not something confined to sideshows and the fringes of show business. That it's a real serious thing. I mean, I suppose Jan Mars probably did all this 50 years ago. I confess I never read her book. Because I reviewed one of her later books and I hated it so much, I never read that one. Anyway, she did climb Everest. But anyway, there have been other trans memoirs, is what I'm saying, but they were in a different context at a different time, and people use different language and all this kind of stuff. So, I'm just making my humble effort to make it comprehensible to today's modern readers.
Since you didn't read Conundrum, did you think about trans memoirs as you were writing this, or read them? I'm just thinking about the sort of, right, there's the trope of the trans memoir. Right, I always knew the tortured kid, and then I go to the big city, and then I come out, and then everything works out great.
Right. Yeah, there's that, a lot of really annoying rhetoric, like whole pages of, was not gonna preach. I mean, even if I'd ever thought of preaching, which is not really my style, I mean, reading so many trans memoirs where we're interrupted by sermonettes every 5 pages, I couldn't do it. For the record, my favorite trans memoir, nobody's asked me this yet, but it's actually out of print, but it's a great book, and that is April Ashley's Odyssey. You know, April Ashley was British, came out like in her teens, was an entertainer, went to the Riviera and entertained in the clubs of Paris, married a baronet, and was outed at their very public divorce trial. And she just died a couple of years ago looking like the Queen Mother. And she's like quintessentially English. Her book is, it's very catty, but it's very funny. And the world needs more funny trans memoirs, I think.
Yes, agreed. Hard to do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of, I don't know if you feel this, but I feel this nervousness around, like, how to write about trans experience. Will it be weaponized by the transphobes? Will trans people hate you for doing it wrong? And that's what I was thinking of when you said the sort of peer pressure to. But
oh yeah. I mean, I just thought, the transphobes. I don't know. Will they be able to read this book even, or do they need it in comic book format? I don't know.
Trans for dummies. Yeah, you expressed concern about being seen as following a trans trend, right? And is that still a concern? Do you worry about?
It wasn't really a concern. It was just something that flashed through my mind. And actually, the absolute coincidence that I sold my papers to the New York Public Library, like in 2017, I started this, and I got paid right around this time. It was purely coincidental, I think. But I could just see, the New York Post headline, Prof loots public funds for sex change. Something like that.
I love that. I kind of wish that had happened. Great government. It's, we're right in this moment where there is this idea of rapid onset gender dysphoria, whatever it is, right? That the internet is spreading a trans virus and turning all the kids into trans people.
And the New York Times focuses yet again on detransitioners, who are a very, very, very small minority. And when they print their letters column, they devote half the letters to detransitioners, as if it's a public disinformation campaign, if I ever heard of one.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's not even space for, a much more complex conversation about quote unquote detransition, which, folks are talking about it as like, that's the wrong word, that there's a moving through, right? That when you expand outside of the gender binary, you don't even have to talk about detransition, that it becomes more just of the expansion of self and gender and the fluidity of all that. So, but that doesn't actually get any space.
No, of course not.
So you also, you didn't have role models, growing up younger. There were some trans people in your world, but you, as you were starting to come out and transition, you got a trans mother and a younger trans woman. Tell us about that relationship.
Well, it was pretty uncanny. I mean, I actually started corresponding with her because she was the prize pupil of a very good friend of mine, Barbara S., who died of brain cancer. She was ailing by the fall of 2020, and I started writing to Lior about Barbara's teaching methods. I was really curious because she had this kind of way of bringing everything down to point zero, you know, the not knowing. She was, she was all about negative capability, and it blew my mind. I really wanted to learn how she did it, and we started writing, and then Barbara went critical on the day my egg cracked, and she was and she died like right as I was like mailing out these letters. And then her funeral was on Zoom, and Leora Devel delivered the eulogy. And I realized, oh, this is the person I've been writing to, he was trans. So, you know, I got in touch, and we hit it off, and able to talk, you know, and she was very positive role model, very self-confident, and, you know, basically taught me by example how to, like, flow through crowds and just not notice who was staring at you. It's a big lesson, but many others too. I mean, you know, there's a regular curriculum going on there for a good 6 to 8 months.
What was that like to have the generations reversed in terms of your trans mother being how many years younger than you?
43.
43?
Yeah. Well, you know, it was fine by me. I mean, see, the thing is, when you get to be my age, you're also 27 or whatever, you know. It's like in my head, I am not my chronological age at all. And, you know, and I think but if you're in good health, of course, the older you get, the more likely that is to be that you're like any age. So, and I never really ever, I mean, even after 27 years of teaching college, I never thought of myself as an elder, you know. So I was perfectly prepared to get lessons from somebody who could be my granddaughter.
My trans patients have informed me that I'm a trans elder now at 52. I'm not quite sure how you feel about that, but I think you get to be an elder.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to be both at the same time. Right?
Yeah.
Where are we with time? We're good? Yeah. Okay, great. You know, you write about your first memoir, Factory of Facts,
Mm-hmm.
and you say that you didn't really reveal yourself in that book, and this one you really put it out there, and I'm just wondering about, you know, was there any dissonance for you having been somebody who was more, you know, holding back into now putting it out there? I know it flowed out of you, so it sounds like it was pretty...
Well, yeah, it's
pretty
the
natural.
return of the repressed, you know. Because, I mean, the reason I wanted to depict myself as a squiggle on an architectural elevation is partly because I didn't want to, you know, I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want, you know, the minute I would start talking about my emotions, my relationships with my mother especially, the whole thing was going to spill, you know. And I was really guarding every border crossing for so many years, ever vigilant. Yeah, so when I wrote that book, I remember somebody telling me, also the other thing too is, you know, at the time, like some critic or somebody wrote, you know, why didn't this person make it into a novel? And I thought, well, but a novel presupposes that there are a lot of other, you know, people who come from southeastern Belgium and settle in New Jersey, or what, you know, whatever. I mean, like I couldn't square the specifics of my life with the idea of turning it into a fiction, you know. And I guess where was I going with that? I don't know, but it's just yeah. I mean, but fundamentally, it was really about you know, making myself visible on the porch without letting people into the house, you know.
And now you've let us into the house.
Yeah, including my boudoir. Yeah.
Is there any remnant of anxiety about that, or does it really feel...
Oh, I'm pretty chill about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm vain, and I, you know, worry constantly about my looks, sure, you know, and certain photographs that appear in the print, you know, give me, you know, certain hours of painful reflection that, you know, yes, I am, after all, about to turn 70. But, you know, c'est la vie, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, now that you're not preparing for death, although
Well, you know, it's gonna happen. You know, today's world.
yes.
Yeah.
You mentioned your mother and not in writing, not wanting to, as you're writing about her, it would all open up, and I wonder about the question. You kind of go there a little bit in this book. That question of what made me trans, which I think we all kind of carry around with us, right? And have a relationship to that question. Is that a question to ask? Is it not a question to ask? Is it pathologizing? Is it not? Right? Cis people don't go around saying, "Well, what made me cis?" I mean, most. Right. But it's a question that kind of haunts us, I think, and so I'm wondering about, your relationship to that question, and also in the memoir, you go there and you say that your mother had a female child who was stillborn, and that she longed for this daughter, and that she wanted you to be. Maybe she wanted you to be the daughter. Maybe she wanted you to be herself and her own mother. You say, right?
Yeah, totally.
So just kind of, where do you sit with that question? How do you relate to it?
Some of it is like pretty obvious, and some of it is just plain eerie. So my stillborn elder sister was stillborn exactly a year and a month before me. I got her names in reverse. She was Marie-Luce, and I became Luc-Marie. So that's kind of weird. And then my mother just never made her peace with this. I mean, she was hoping for a daughter, I could tell. She wanted somebody who would be her, or at least would be like her cousins, Nelly and Germaine, her best friends, like somebody like that. Somebody, and she couldn't know more than my mother, this daughter, this ideal daughter. She couldn't know more, she couldn't experience more. She just had to be, junior copy. And she kind of swung back and forth between resenting me, trying to make me that, etc. So it messed with my head, definitely.
I can imagine that it could be difficult to know your own femininity with that kind of pressure from her too.
Right. Yeah. Sure. Of course.
I'm sorry. I'm not. I know. I think about mothers a lot. And where they are, and even after they're gone, they're with us, right? And where do you ever imagine how she would respond to your transition, or how do you think of her that way, or is it so far gone that it's?
Well, I mean, I cannot, just given much more mundane things that my mother was unable to countenance, I cannot imagine how she would react. I mean, this is not. I mean, well, I say in the book, there's a point in the book where my mother and I are having a fight. This is when I'm like 17, maybe. Having this vicious, monstrous fight. And, well, you have to realize we spoke French at home, but basically we spoke franglais, je vais pouler le tiroir. But in this case, my mother, just in the middle of this fight, called me a faggot. And I just what the? And just then, my father, who was in the next room, overheard, led her into the bedroom, closed the door, and she emerged 5 minutes later, weeping and shaking and begging my forgiveness because she had no idea what the word meant, and she was totally freaked out by it. So you can just imagine, right?
Yes, I can imagine. How was your publishing experience? How was your editor with this material? And
that was great. I mean, very, very few comments, really. I had absolutely no complaints. I mean, basically, that's what you're reading is the book I wrote.
And does it feel like this is the book you wanted to write?
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Fantastic. What have I not asked you that you might like to be asked? How are the interviews going? Are there things that...
Oh, they've been great. I mean, really. Oh yeah, my only regret about the book, by the way, is that I wanted the pictures to run like in the text, like Sebald, you know.
Yeah.
But it was too short for, you know, some printing protocol, I don't know what. So they had to expand it by putting some of the pictures separately on a page.
It works though.
Yeah, it's fine.
It was interesting that you included a side-by-side of your former face.
Well, there's a story with that one because, yeah, that really kind of creepy before and after shot. The number one, the one on the left, that was taken in the summer of 2020, so like 6 months more or less before my egg cracked. And where I got this picture was one day in, I guess it was like the summer of 2021, I watched the Andy Warhol Diaries, which I'd completely forgotten I was interviewed for. So there's this thing on the screen that's sitting on my porch, and what the France? Yeah, so it was a big shockaroo seeing that. I had completely forgotten, and Ghost of Christmas Past. Right?
And that shockaroo made you want to include it in the book?
Oh yeah, I thought, you know, I mean, it was the most difficult picture to include, and that's why I decided to include it.
It's kind of a counterphobic.
It was a counter vanity. You know? Yeah.
I think those are all my questions.
All right.
Yeah, we're ready for Q&A?
Open it to the floor here. Don't be shy. Hey.
How's it going? Because you both written so extensively about New York, I'm curious about, maybe it's a question for both of you, about how your relationship to New York or New York City's history has maybe informed your own like clarity about your own life, if there's any relationship to this being so personal for you, Lucy, how your past writing you said this came so easily, if there's been times you've been writing about New York City history or culture before that you found more clarity in yourself, or maybe it prevented you from finding more clarity in yourself, or if there's any...
Well, to tell you the honest truth, when I was writing about New York City history, I wasn't thinking at all about clarity about myself. I was thinking about New York City, you know. I mean, the thing, it does make me sad that I've now come out in this great place that was once the great refuge of all the weirdos in the world, and it's no longer that, you know. That cause for regret there. Great, we have no more questions. We can go on. Franklin.
Oh, sorry. Okay, we'll go back to you. Wait, sorry, who am I going to?
Besides other memoirs, are there works of art, including music, that helped you or hindered you in thinking about this? Because obviously, the title and everything that a world connected to Warhol that you're talking about as well through this, that you've been dealing with for longer than you've been public about these experiences.
Yeah, well, for me, actually, my musical accompaniment to all of this, like probably my first full year of transition was the first 4 albums by Nico, which I played over and over and over and over. Yeah. As far as other books and stuff, I mean, I go into some detail in the book about this British novel from 1966 called, by Jeff Brown, called I Want What I Want, which is the book that moved me the most about transition. Written by this man who wrote 2 novels. The other one was from the perspective of a schizophrenic, and then gave up writing for the rest of his life. So there was that, and a few trans books. Reading, for example, Histories of the Transgender Child by Jules Gill Peterson, which is the history of trans medicine, and also it's really amazing book because the way it ties race into this is very, very interesting. It's an academic book, but it's not written in jargon. It's gripping, and I could probably think of more books, but those were the main things.
Just wondering a little more detail about the writing process. When you said that, you woke up in the morning, ate breakfast, and then just wrote easily. Were you naturally in a state of flow during that, or were you forcing the words out?
Oh, I was not forcing. I was in a state of flow. I edit as I go, and then I edit some more, and then I edit some more, etc. I condense all the time. I try to use the fewest word possible in every circumstance. But yeah, I just had so much to say. I had a little tiny outline on an index card because at a certain point I had to make sure that I had enough transition sequences to balance out the decades of my life, so that it would end with one longer than the other. But that's all. The rest of it, I let my subconscious do the writing. It's really that's the shoemaker's elves in my head there.
Was that that structure of going back and forth? Did that sort of come out naturally? Was that something you intended to do in terms of wanting it to sort of keep that pace going, or how did that come about?
Well, it was a simple solution to an architectural problem. Here I have these two timelines. One's very short and one's very long. Do I present one for, no, it makes the most sense to interleave them. And furthermore, that's the added advantage of being an old suspense novel trope. You keep interrupting the action, it's propulsive.
Yeah, I felt that way, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, hey. Shelley.
Hi. This is a writery question. You've spoken about your reluctance, maybe even to the point of a kind of cringing away from the idea of writing memoir in a highly personal vein. And I've taken that to be not just the impulse to hide, but also an aesthetic choice. Mm-hmm. In this project, though, you seem to have ditched that distance. And I'm wondering whether you changed your mind aesthetically, or whether it's that other concerns trumped the aesthetic question, or whether you found a way, Pat, to reconcile those two modes.
Well, the aesthetic was, I'm not denying I'm not going to say it was fraudulent, but it was definitely in service of hiding, an aesthetic is very often an alibi of some kind. But now, with this book, it was just went with the territory, went with my assignment is to be totally frank about everything. And the fact is that combination of, combination of the book, the book, my recent experiences, hormone replacement therapy, all these things have made me brutally honest. I am incapable of deception now. And I tell people to their face what I think, which is not always welcome, but it's just, it's the way I am now. And I opened Pandora's box, and all this stuff came flying out, including, all these years of repression. And so this is my id on holiday or something. I don't know, but I don't think I'm going to be receding from my pages anytime soon.
Does that feel like a good place to close?
Okay. Yeah, actually, well, that means just a quick question. All that bursting forth of writing, is there more? Do you feel like, do you know what's next?
Well, I have another book under contract. This was the two books that replaced the Lou Reed biography I was never going to write. So the other one is The Velvet Underground in Their Times, which is really a book about New York in the 60s, which is something I've always wanted to write about. And then I know what the next two books are going to be about, but I'm not ready to talk about them in public just yet.
Thank you so much.